A deep dive into the most iconic Psycho Clown is available on Screambox and VOD platforms this week. Pennywise, the story of It, brings back the cast from the original 1990 miniseries and unpacks what it took to bring the sewer dwelling clown to life, including interviews with Tommy Lee Wallace, Tim Reed, and Hollywood icon Tim Curry. Seeing how the film was made and behind the scenes clips brings back all that lovely PTSD Curry gave us as kids. In addition to this release, Unearthed and Untold: The Path to Pet Cemetery is also available on the streaming platform. With the popularity of nostalgic horror growing, what are some of the best horror film documentaries out there and some you would like to see?
Yeah, this was a treat, man. This was interesting, and you're kind of getting a nice little pseudo review of this from us because we
Yeah,
both got to check this out. Luke did he took one for the team here, and he subscribed to Screenbox, and
I
we got
did.
to
I
watch
wanted to see what
this.
was on there.
Yeah, it's
I never heard
interesting.
so much about it.
Yeah, neither have I. I mean, like, it's I've looked around a little bit about it. I like this documentary, and I think if they can kind of corner the market on that, they might have something going for them.
I think
But
so
right
too.
now, just because we just also rebounded and got our Shutter back up and
Yeah.
running, and just really going on there and checking those things out, like it's just one of those things where it's like, oh man, like Shutter really has a really great thing going for itself right
And
now.
Shudder has already kind of doubled down in terms of making those exclusives on there. So I
Hmm.
mean, they're up and running. They're really going. I think Screenbox has a lot of potential. I just don't think it's there yet. I think this is a
Yes.
good start. They have to get there. Maybe they can come up with their own exclusives as well. But right now, I think Shudder is um, ahead of the game right now in terms of
Hmm.
horror streaming services.
Absolutely. But yeah, this was a really great documentary. I
Yeah,
know we really didn't talk much about it. We just mentioned that we had finished watching it. And I gotta say, I would put this up with the likes, not necessarily the caliber, considering how much you get with something like a Crystal Lake Memories or a Never Sleep Again, but it's you could throw this on right after watching those, and I think you'd be more than satisfied. I
yeah.
love this deep dive, retrospective, behind the scenes stuff when it comes to something like this. Honestly, one of the things that like gave me the closest thing to this would be a shout out to the Halloweenies, or actually Losers Club, same people, but Losers Club, when they did their when they went through the book, and then they went through and they did like a 2 or 3 hour long episode discussing the mini series. That
Okay,
was
yeah.
pretty detailed, but it is nice to really see them kind of take this and they put the images to it and the interviews and everything, and just see these people come back and discuss it and just kind of how they got the roles, how things came about. And you can really see there was a lot of excitement for when this book came out. And just where it was all coming from and a lot of care that was taken to it. It took a long time for this to hit screens. I mean, at one point, I believe early on in the documentary, Larry Cohen talks about how he thought he was going to shepherd this thing all the way through to the end,
Yeah.
even directing it and all, but he had to step away because things had taken so long. But before that, he had brought Tommy Lee Wallace in, so he knew that he had left it in good hands. But
And
yeah, great, great
you know,
documentary.
I, I didn't know what to expect going into this. I had seen it online, saying it's coming out and all this stuff, and I was like, this intrigues me because I haven't done a lot of research into that 1990 miniseries at all. We all watched it. Tim Curry as Pennywise, I mean, so iconic. You always think about him in terms of, I had PTSD from seeing a clown.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think he's responsible in a big way for that. So I was very intrigued to see that someone was doing a deep dive, and as soon as I subscribed and I flipped it on, it's like it's over 2 hours, and I was like, I was expecting maybe this hour and a half little documentary, but they really went all out for this. I was very surprised to see interviews with Tim Curry, knowing his health issues. I'm glad that he was available to do this. They really got a lot of the cast back. It's very
Oh
intriguing. I
yeah.
wasn't expecting to see that in depth from it, but it's very intriguing to kind of see how what the cast had thought while they were filming and the kind of process this went through. Because looking at it, I mean, I think it's even evident in the new versions, where the first half with the kids is so strong, and then that second half it kind of loses it. And it was very intriguing to see, even in that script writing process, where Tommy Lee Wallace is talking about it, and he's like, that second script, that night two, needed a lot of work, and it just what they felt like it wasn't hitting, and it like they were really aware of those problems going into it. And it's like, yeah, because sometimes you're like watching things, you're always like, were the directors, were the writers, were they oblivious to this? But it's like, at that point it just confirms that, yeah, this was an issue going in.
Yeah, no, and they were very honest about that and upfront, even from like the first couple of minutes of this documentary. They even say that, to where it's like, they know that that was the weaker side of it and that it really needed a lot of work. And I think Tommy Lee Wallace even says at one point, he needed to find the cheapest writer he could get, which was him. Where he would go into a hotel room at night and he would just type, 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 and just try to piece it together as best he could. Like, he said that sometimes he wouldn't even look back on what he wrote until the next morning, and just, needed to get through it. Like, he says that he's never written anything that fast before.
Yeah,
Just really trying to find that cohesion. But I mean, it's even like this. The book kind of structures it differently. The book is kind of switching perspectives throughout. But even then, like, a lot of people say that the adults have some of the weaker parts. So it's like, it's just kind of, I think, in the DNA of the story,
yeah.
unfortunately. But
And it's just such a long book. I haven't read it, but it's like you're gonna have that strong part and weak part. But it, in looking back, the cast for the adults was another strong cast. I felt like they really did well in casting there. It just, I don't know, it loses it somewhere. That connection is not made. I feel like even going back today and watching it, you really feel that it is kind of just so weak. I don't know if it's because that first part is so enjoyable that just by comparison that it just doesn't work, or by the end, in that kind of end result, it just kind of maybe deflates it even more.
yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one for me because I think that, like, is there a version of the story that you can tell that really gets both parts right? I think so. I just don't know how far you'd have to depart from the actual source material,
Yep.
which is something that, I've always really loved Pennywise the Clown. I think that his character, his essence, the entity of what he is such a cool idea and is scary in and of itself. Like, I, like you, traumatized by this fucking clown. Tim Curry, I give you all the props in the world. You scared the living shit out of me. I know we mention it a lot. My dad watches this show. He can probably remember when I was a little kid, I walked out in the living room while they were watching this, and I just lost my fucking mind seeing him come out of the drain and talk to God, who was it? When the shower sequence, was it
Oh,
Eddie
yeah, I think it's
Casper? Yeah,
Eddie.
yeah,
Yep.
he's talking to Eddie, and he comes up and he pushes the drain open. I own the movie on Blu-ray now, so I adore it. But it's one of those things where watching that, I don't know. I think just the imagery of Tim Curry and that performance, and just seeing
Yeah.
that brief sequence, I don't know what it was when he did the teeth and you saw his mouth and shit. I had literally thought that, in my mind, I had like twisted this to this point where Pennywise's head is the only thing that comes up out of the drain, and he starts
Yeah.
spinning in circles and gargling blood. And I
Yeah.
remember telling my dad that a couple years later, and he's like, "That never happened in the movie, bud." And then I watched the movie, and I'm like, "Oh, it didn't happen like that." I guess so traumatized that my brain filled in
You
these blanks
construct.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, you construct these own imagery in your head that doesn't even exist. Because I've had that before in terms of films, and you're kind of watching it, waiting, 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 and it never pops up, and you're like, "Did I just create that in my head?" Because it's like sometimes it's so traumatizing that you think about it and you start melding ideas together in your head. That makes it even more terrifying after watching it. Like
Mhm.
that scene, the beginning scene, Georgie with the boat in the sewer. I mean, for me, absolutely terrifying. I remember watching that as a kid. My dad absolutely loved Stephen King, read all his books. So anytime there was a Stephen King property on TV, we were watching it. That's how I've seen Silver Bullet so many times. But um, so it's like watching that. I that was the only one that I can really think of that really terrified me as a kid. So I remember like seeing that sewer scene and legitimately hiding my face because I was just absolutely terrified. And it's like going into, how I feel about the remake as opposed to the 1990 miniseries, where it's like I think that, especially where they dive into in the documentary, where Tim Curry was so adamant about kind of just doing, he didn't, selfishly maybe he didn't want to do a lot of makeup, but he also felt like his face could tell and terrify everyone, which it really did. And it's like, for that, I feel like it's less is more, and I think Tim Curry is such an exceptional actor that he was able to facially, with hardly any prosthetics, really make you scared. And it's something about the eyes for me, just looking in. He's absolutely scary to me, and it's like just that imagery of, the newer version of Pennywise is kind of like a little drearier, not as vibrant, I would guess, and the Tim Curry version is extreme. Putting him down that sewer, he's the white, the red, all pops, makes it so terrifying in that dark, dingy sewer. And it's like that's what sticks out in my head so much. And it's like I think that's what makes that miniseries so great.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've always heard this comparison is to where, with the new one, Bill Skarsgård, like it's a great performance. I think he does a good job, especially because there are elements to that, like especially with how he like can twist and contort himself and his eyes that he's actually doing, and not it's not CG, which is great.
Yeah,
Um, but he's clearly a monster, and you can never really tell. There's not that innocence there that like you get with Tim Curry. Of Tim Curry can convince you that he is a silly, goofy clown,
yeah,
and you get those overtones of almost this child abductor like essence with Tim
yeah,
Curry that you don't really get with Skarsgård, because Skarsgård is a monster through and through. He's a creature, he's a beast, you can tell. As to where this, he could be just a guy or just a clown. He could be your friend,
yeah,
um, in a really strange way. But I think that's why Tim Curry's performance will always stand the test of time. And I still give Skarsgård props. I think it's a great performance, like I said. But like, this is the definitive Pennywise, and this
yeah,
documentary does a great job of showing you the kind of look behind the curtain of what Tim Curry went through to bring us that performance, and
yeah,
where his headspace was, where the director and writer's headspace was. I think I don't remember exactly who says it because I've only seen the documentary once to by this point, but there was a great line when they discuss his involvement in the film of someone, it might have been Tommy Lee Wallace, who said, half of a director's job is to cast the film correctly and then just step out of the way.
yeah,
Because if you get it right, they're going to give you everything, and they'll bring you everything that you'd hope for and more. And I
yeah,
thought that was really brave. And I thought that that was a really awesome way to put it, because I mean, this was came out in what, 1990,
yeah,
or around there. And it's one of those things where even today you will still find people, even with the age of the remake, telling you that this is still so terrifying to them, and it sticks with them. It's a classic, great film, and also just this is a wonderful companion piece, and I'm really happy to have it.
yeah. And that's where it's like diving into that Tim Curry role, where I think Tommy Lee Wallace talks about that he was pretty. Um, he wanted a lot of. He wanted to try those prosthetics, and Tim Curry put it on, and then was adamant about not using it, and then they did not use it, and they let Tim Curry do his thing, and then Tommy Lee Wallace goes, "Oh, that's why we casted Tim Curry, because he can do it." And it's just like, I think that miniseries works so well with him, and then just being able in the documentary to be able to see the camaraderie between the actual kids and the actual adults. Between, it seems like everyone, for better or worse, had fun on that set. I know, like they talk about the kids kind of almost being an annoyance in
Mhm.
a sense, because they caused so much trouble, and how almost Seth Green was a ringleader, kind of getting everyone riled up. And I really did like hearing all of that, because it's like, it felt like there was uh, a kinship in
Yeah.
in that whole thing, in the kind of how Tim Curry was distant toward the entire cast, because he wanted to um, kind of keep that kind of barrier to be scared of Pennywise, and it's like I love seeing those behind the scenes shots of him sitting in the chair, smoking a cigarette, walking in the rain, all that stuff. I think it's so perfect. It's such a great deep dive. Highly recommend it to anyone. It's definitely worth the price of a subscription to Screenbox, or it's available on Vudu, I believe. I think you can own it for maybe $12.99. Definitely
I
worth the
was about to
price.
say, yeah, you can get it for $12 on Vudu right now too. Which I
So it's
think
like,
I will probably add it to my Vudu because I could see myself going back every few years, just like with Never Sleep Again and Crystal Lake
yes.
Memories.
And
Just
and that's
checking
where it's
this
like
one out.
these horror documentaries are just so perfect. These deep dives of I
Hmm.
love this kind of the space that we're in where everyone loves horror, and maybe back in the 80s it wasn't really popular to kind of do long form documentaries on these things because it was just like, hey, we're pumping them out, part 4, 5, 6, just get them out there. But then there's so much of a love that we're gonna do these Crystal Lake Memories or Never Sleep Again, or there's a Fright Night documentary out there that is pretty great as well. All these different things, even um, Scream Factory, they do wonderful
Oh,
miniature documentaries
awesome.
within those extras, and it's just like you love
Same with Arrow
seeing.
Video. Yeah, they all like
There's a
you can
there's a
get a lot of good stuff.
there's a great one on that American Werewolf in London about the kind of
Beware the
werewolves through
Moon.
cinema.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, and
Hmm.
I think that's perfect to kind of go through and see how the different iterations of werewolves. But this one, this Pennywise documentary, another one. It's up there. It's top tier documentary. Definitely highly recommend if you have any interest in actual the story of it or just have heard about it. It's definitely worth a watch.